This episode of Hack Circus is sponsored by Artifact Cards. It's ARTEFACT, artifactshop.com. I think you guys could get a lot out of Artifact Cards as people who are interested in creativity. They are little beautifully produced packaged cards about the size of playing cards, and you get a pen with them, and they're blank and they come in different colours, and they are great for anybody who works with ideas. Personally, I use them to do my flat planning for Hack Circus magazine. Amongst other things, you can use them to design things, so that's for me, that's an interesting idea. You have lots of little white cards that you can wipe clean, and you can lay them out in any arrangement and invent a game or design a website, design a layout for something physically in real space. And I think this is something that's really needed these days. You can use them instead of post-it notes, you can use them for planning talks, you can use them for planning, events, publications, any of the sorts of things that I do, to be honest. So head over to artifactshop.com and see what all the fuss is about. Let's get back to the show.
I keep my pen, as you can see, the white, beautiful pen.
Yes.
But while I've got that, and I've got the chequebook, I will always be the governor.
Welcome to Hack Circus. A bit of a special episode for you this week. I went down to the National Fairground and Circus Archive, where I got a tour from the brilliant Angela Hayden, who's the director there, and I got to meet two brilliant guys. Graham Downey is editor of the Fairground Mercury and chairman of the Fairground Association of Great Britain, was there with some photos that he had, so we talk about that. And Anthony Harris, who's the fantastic former president of the Showmen's Guild of Great Britain and a wonderful showman still at the age of 76. He filled me in on the family business that he's been part of all his life since he was a very young child. And I don't want to spoil anything. I think you should listen to it and find out exactly how he was involved in the fairground at that age. It's just brilliant. I love meeting these blokes. They were really, really interesting, and it was so cool to get a tour. If you are in Sheffield anytime, well, first of all, let me know, because I live here, but also go down to the archive and get a tour. You'll have to book ahead, I think, because it's kind of a private reading room thing, but you just do it. Just go along and have a look round, because it's so fascinating and joyful. I really enjoyed this one. I hope you do too. As usual, find us on all the social media. We're on Facebook, Hack Circus Podcast, Twitter at Hack Circus, Instagram at Hack Circus, everything, just type in Hack Circus and I'm sure we'll come up. If you want to email me, it's editor@hackcircus.com, and I will see you next week. Yeah, so I'm here at the National Fairground Archives, which are based in Sheffield, where I live, which I'm always delighted by that fact, because I don't think people realise that. And there's just a wonderful collection of circus and fairground and magic and show-related stuff, and it's fantastic. And I've been here once before, but I didn't get the full tour and the full experience, and I'm just surrounded by posters and pictures of acrobats, and it's just amazing. So Angela is going to give us a little tour, so take it away, Angela.
Thank you. So you're here in our reading room, and this is actually only a small part of our collection. So what we've got up here is, first of all of our journals, and then we've got most of our literature collections here. The rare books and things we keep downstairs, but we've also got sort of thousands of archival items of ephemera and records and business records, family records, photographs, negatives, early film we collect as well. All those are just stored down in the basement because it's better climatic conditions for them. So the archive was established in 1994 by Professor Vanessa Toulman with the support of the Showmen's Guild and also the Fairground Association of Great Britain. And it came really out of Vanessa's PhD research. because she was interviewing people about the fair, and people started to want to give her items, and she realised that there was nowhere that was sort of collecting nationally, for the fairground. So it really grew out of that with the support of the University of Sheffield Library. And we've grown from there, really, as I say, to have our own reading room. We welcome sort of international visitors, family historians, enthusiasts for the fairground and for the circus. And we also get a lot of interest from media companies who want to use our images for the TV programmes and films and things like that. Just this year, an exciting new development is that we've received the archive of the Circus Friends Association, which again is a really significant collection. It's got over 2,500 sort of circus posters dating from the 19th to the century to the current day. It's got posters, it's got programmes, it's got sort of original research, photographs. So in recognition of that, we've got our exhibition at the moment, Spectacle and Wonder, the Circus Friends Association Archive. But we've also changed our name from the National Fairground Archive to the National Fairground and Circus Archive. So as well as kind of welcoming people into our reading room, we get involved in a lot of outreach activities. So within Sheffield, we have tents at Norfolk Park Fair and also Western Park Fair. So every year we take out displays to show people what we've got and encourage them to use our resources. And we also do things like sort of host group visits and hold our exhibition once a year as well.
It's such a lovely thing, and I guess you can book to come and just look round if you're in the area. You can,
Yeah, definitely, we welcome, members of the public are very welcome to come in. We're open Mondays to Wednesdays. And we'd always suggest that you check our website and just let us know if you want to come in, especially if you want to view any of the archival items, because then we can get them out ready for you. But we're very welcome to come in and just browse all the collections in the reading room as well.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you've got around here? There's lots of I can see lots of spines of programmes and books and things, but I don't know what they are. I'm presuming there's an order to all of this. It is like being in a library, really, isn't it?
In the reading room it is, right. Yeah. So we've got our collections, really. The literature collections are split up because if a library of items came in together, we would keep them all together. I should say as well that our name gives the impression that we only collect Fairground and Circus, but you've got to remember that coming from that, there's loads of other types of entertainment. So there's things like magic. So we've got the Cyril Critchlow Magic Collection of Literature just over there. We've got things like boxing, early film, things like menageries, world fairs. So it is quite an extensive sort of subject range to do with popular entertainment. So another kind of literature collection we've got is the Circus Friends Association library that they donated about 10 years ago to us. And then our other collections are just ordered by, the surname of the author. And as I say, we actively, continue to collect journals, newspapers and things like that to do with fairgrounds and circus and all those entertainments. I should say as well, behind us, we've got a collection of the World's Fair, which is the weekly newspaper for the showmen. And that dates back to the start of the 20th century, and we've got a complete run from them. That we've got the originals, but you can come in and look at them on microfilm as well.
I'm just looking at like a wall of cardboard here. They're all in their own little boxes, very organised.
We've got some of them that have been restored as well, that are really beautiful to look at.
Oh, is that those books on the top?
It is, yeah. But they're particularly good for family historians, because if you want to trace sort of, particular fairground acts, you can go through and browse and see if you can find your relatives.
Oh, amazing. It would be so exciting to find your great aunt or whatever who was in a thing,
Yeah. I should say as well, we've got an awful lot of our photographic collections digitised that are available on our website, NFA Digital. And that's really good for, again, looking for kind of, if you know that you had people in your family who travelled with the fair or with the circus, put their name in and see what you can find.
Graham, what's your involvement? How did you come to be here today?
I was involved right from the start of the archive back in the early 1990s, and together with Vanessa and other members of the university at the time, set up the archive and brought in some of the earliest collections. And what we see in front of us is one of those. These are photographs taken by the late Lionel Bathe, who lived at Nailsworth in the Cotswolds. He was a remarkable photographer, as you can see from these pictures. He had what was probably an undoubted advantage, in as much as he was the son of a commercial photographer. And I say commercial rather than professional, because he wasn't a David Bailey, but he was probably the sort of man you'd go to have your wedding photograph and so on. But he made sure that young Lionel, from a very early age, probably about 12 or 13, had a good quality camera to use. This was back in the 1930s, and he obviously learnt how to take good photographs fairly quickly. But more than that, he had an extremely good eye for what makes a good photograph, well composed, and also, and of course this is the most remarkable thing about it, he obviously had a sense of the fact that he was recording social history. He didn't take the sort of stock fairground shots that a lot of fairground enthusiasts will take, shots of lorries or rides, but he took pictures of the people who ran the equipment, and you get a far better feel of the business and that particular era from his pictures than ever a photograph of just simply the equipment would give you.
Yeah, they're not performing generally. We're looking at 8 sort of A4 sized black and white portraits really, and some of them are individuals and some of them are groups, and a few of them are families, which is quite nice.
Yes.
But like you say, they're very kind of almost like holiday photos, but very sharp, very well composed, kind of atmospheric, and capturing the character of the people. And these 2 chaps sitting on a caravan steps with their arms folded, and the woman looking off into the distance behind the stable door thing. They're very characterful, aren't they? Somehow they're really lovely pictures.
And importantly for the archive, now that it has become the National Fairground and Circus Archive, Lionel straddled both worlds. He took fairground photographs, he took circus photographs, because they're one and the same world in a sense. Yeah. So they here we've got a shot here of a ringmaster of a circus, probably taken in the 1940s.
Right.
There's a woman running a hoopla with the rings over her arm, the game where you used to throw those rings and try and get them over a block on which was mounted the prize, ring and blocks as it was called. Here's a show in which the woman on the front there, Mrs. Allen, Mrs. Sonia Allen, tamed lions.
Oh wow, fantastic!
And that was part of the fairground in those days.
Gosh, yeah, it was a better time really, wasn't it? You had a really good show in those days.
Oh yes, live shows, you see. In fact, the shows were the original heart of the fairground. It's why we talk about showmen.
Yes, yeah.
We don't talk about riding masters, we talk about showmen, because the principal showmen of the 18th century had shows. They didn't have rides. It was a century later before rides became the big thing.
And you had to have a skill, and maybe that's partly why it was so family-based, because the best way to get really good at something is to have your parents show you how to do it from a young age, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, the fairground business, and to an extent, I suppose, equally, the circus business is very much a family-dominated one, where skills are passed on from one generation to the next.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see. So what's your own background and interest in circus and fair?
Well, I trained as a book illustrator.
Ah, right. Okay.
But I'd always been interested in fairs from an extremely early age. I first saw a fair arriving at the recreation ground opposite to where we lived at the age of 3. It was obviously, I don't remember this, but I'm told that I found this so fascinating, I was across the road within minutes to see what was going on. And my mother, having realised I'd disappeared, went across the road and found me and dragged me back. And then, to prevent me doing it again, tied the gate.
Oh.
But what she hadn't reckoned with was that I could climb over the gate. And that was it. She gave up.
You've brought these today with you, is that right?
No, they're part of the Archives collection. It was one of the first collections to come here, and it came here almost entirely due to the fact that I knew Lionel. I used to visit him at his home in Nailsworth when I used to go that way on business, because I worked in the printing trade for a long time, and it used to take me through the Cotswolds to Bath and Bristol and elsewhere, and that was always a good excuse to go in and see Lionel, who had these tremendous photographs. And he said to me on more than one occasion, "Oh, well, when I'm gone, they will all come to you," meaning the Fairground Association of Great Britain. But sadly, Lionel suffered a stroke and spent the last 2 years of his life in a hospital in an almost vegetable condition, and having left no instructions as to what was to happen to any of his property, let alone his photographs. But at his funeral, I had a conversation with his solicitor, literally standing by the side of his open grave, and his solicitor, who was obviously keen to move on to other things, said, "Yes, you can have all the photographs, that's it." But I had told him that were that to happen, they would come to what was then the newly established Fairground Archive at Sheffield University. And it as Angela has already said, it is one of the prime collections here because of the breadth of the images and the sheer beauty of them.
The ones that, even just the ones that I'm looking at now, are so evocative. And each one contains a complete story, and it's so fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's this chap with the basket?
Well, it's a lucky dip.
Ah, yes, okay.
The basket contains, well, I suppose tickets or something like that. Yeah. You pay your money, you dip into the basket, pull out the ticket, and then that determines whether you've won a prize or not.
So, I mean, in a way, some of these things haven't really changed at all since they were done. Well, they've changed a little bit, and there's more electric light bulbs and things nowadays.
And nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
It's the same old business, you see. Maybe it's jazzed up a bit, with, as you say, with a bit more lighting these days, but essentially the fair caters for those who want to have a go in terms of going on the latest rides or having a go on the hooplas and the stalls, chanting their arm.
What do you make of the circuses nowadays? I feel like maybe circus has changed a bit more. Maybe that's not true.
Oh, circuses have changed dramatically. I mean, the mere fact that there has been opposition in this country to animal acts has meant that circuses have had to change their format. Although, interestingly, the format of most circuses these days is little different to the first circuses of 250 years ago. I think it was only probably in the early part of the 20th century that you had things like, the lion taming acts and things like that introduced to the world of the circus.
I think it's so important in this day and age of everything has to be virtual and online, or you watch something on a screen, and it's just so good to have things that are still real, that you can go and be there.
Oh, precisely, yes.
I love it. It's so great.
One of the other things about Lionel, which hasn't been mentioned so far, is that he was an early user of colour transparency material. He was taking colour photographs in the 1950s. When it was probably a very expensive medium to use, but he nevertheless produced some absolutely superb 2 1/4 square colour slides, which are now here, of course.
Yeah. So is this the full collection? Are there any more?
There are hundreds.
Are there?
Those boxes there are full of enlarged versions. Yeah. Oh, yes. You see. I mean, this is Lionel's negative index.
Yes.
book.
So we're looking at a sort of it looks like a register book.
It was a cash book.
Narrow.
Long, narrow. It was a sort of cash book that you'd have had, well, in a small business, I suppose. 70 years ago.
Yes, it looks very old and aged.
And it's got a tabbed index to it, which Lionel has used to indicate, I suppose how's he grouped things? Yes, M for models, P for Peter's, name of a showman, and so on. And he's described these views, when they were taken. In some cases, his dates are quite precise. Saturday, August the 8th, 1954. Unfortunately, of course, because of his death, there was a certain amount of research work that was necessary in order to identify which of his negatives he was referring to in this index, because they'd got mixed up over the years.
Oh, gosh.
But after a certain amount of effort, we've managed to sort out most of them. And, overall the quality is very high indeed, and they are historic records.
Fantastic, yes.
Yeah.
So we've got a box of negatives here.
Yeah, these are the negatives, you see.
Wow.
No, you see a large format, 2 1/4 squares,
Yes.
so
Yeah, very big.
good quality prints like these can be made.
Does make them look really modern somehow, especially
Yeah.
this little family of little girls. I think as well because it's quite hard to get a very sharp still picture with children in.
Yes.
Especially in those days, can you imagine it even worse? But it's perfect.
And I think in every case, Lionel has taken these using available lighting. There's no flash lighting.
Yeah, amazing.
There was nothing obvious in those photographs. I mean, that photograph, for instance, where the woman is standing inside the hoopla, which is obviously shaded, still, I mean, it's good exposure. And, it's produced a negative, which in turn produces an extremely good print.
Sit me down. I'll just find this photo of my father. Give you some idea.
Oh my God! Someone told me about this act ages ago. So what I'm looking at is a top-down photo of a I don't know what kind of car, an old car.
It's homemade.
It's a homemade, old-fashioned car with the kind of the big, sort of pram wheels on the sides, and then it's got a kind of sidecar attachment with a lioness in it, turning, snarling at the person driving the car. And it's like a one-person car. What a fantastic picture. So who did you say this is?
This is my father, Elias Harris.
How wonderful.
This is about 38,
Amazing.
39, just before the war started. And that is 1949. I'm 76, I was born in 1940.
Right.
So at the time, I was 9.
Yeah.
And if I pull that up, you will see a young man there.
That's you.
That's me.
How wonderful.
I was the youngest Wall of Death rider in the world at that time.
So you were doing it at 9?
From 8. Actually, from 8. I used to come from school in the holidays, because I was at public school.
Yeah.
Border. So I used to come and I was the first act. I had a mini motorbike, which I still have, that my father bought for me.
Fantastic.
And I did the first act, and then that's my father there in all his glory.
Yes, a gentleman in a
Nothing
nice,
less than
smart
Savile
shirt.
Row at the time.
Very
He had
smart.
nothing. Proper riding breeches, boots and all the gear. That bike that you see there, 1932, bought by Pat Collins. There was a dozen of them from Milwaukee in the United States in 1932, and they were brought back to Birmingham, England, where the Wall of Death was built by a firm in Burton-on-Trent called Orton and Spooners, who were originally coffee makers, who turned into wood carvers and started building rides and attractions, and went on for many, many years. And Pat Collins, the firm, had many rides off them, as did other families. The way of payment was part payment as you went, and every holiday, after they know they'd got a few bob with the ride, the Orton and Spooner management would come and with a die would stamp on the chassis of the ride payment to be made on such a date, and then when they'd all been paid, they put a stamp line right through paid. And that's how they paid in those days, on part payments. And when you think the rides or anything, and we're talking, the late 1800s, early 1900s, 10,000, 15,000, that was a lot of money, a fortune in those days for these rides. Now what happened with the Wall of Death, the bike came over with the others. There were a set of 5. Uncle Eddie, my father's brother-in-law, who married the other Collins sister. My father married Margaret Collins, who was the granddaughter of Pat Collins. This is how we get this connection.
Yeah.
And the wedding present was the Wall of Death. and not the lion. That was an innovation later on.
Yeah.
And sadly, after 3-4 years, she died. And my father then was widowed. And with the memories of the Midlands, he moved further south and travelled in London and Wales and along the south coast in that area, and didn't go back because of the memories of the Midlands for a very long time. And that's where he met my mother.
It's another picture. A lady standing in the doorway of a sort of, is it a caravan or a prefab sort of?
And that's my grandfather, the father of my mother, Dan Baker, who were a family called George Bakers and Sons, who had one of the largest haulage contracting business in the south of England, who were show people that went the other way. Normally show people settle down and do something else. But in those days, my great-grandfather went to the Isle of Wight with a fair and a galloper ride.
Yeah.
And while he was there, a farmer said to him, "Could you fetch your engine and do some thrashing for us, because we need the thrashing machine working?" He said, "Yeah, I'll come and do that." So he did that. As a result of that, he came off the Isle of Wight with my grandfather as a baby and £500, having earned from thrashing. From there, he thought, well, this is not a bad idea. I'll do this a bit more. Then he got into haulage. He finished up with 3 sons and 2 daughters, family of 5, with a huge business. They collected the Pirelli cable from Andover and took it to London for electrification. I have photos at home on my wall of my grandfather with steam engines. We had a contract with the RNLI when they were rowing boats and sailboats, fetching them from all over the country back to our depot in Goldhawk Road, at Chiswick, and that's where the boats were refurbished and taken back and redelivered for RNLI. And the other yard at Hounslow, which we still have, my sister has to this day, was used for the Pirelli cable. They came from Eastleigh up to Southampton, were put on the steam engines, taken half the way to Hook in Hampshire, where we had a transport cafe, still have, and that's where the loads were broken down into smaller units, brought to Hounslow, offloaded onto smaller steam wagons and delivered all over London. That massive contract. And up to about 25 years ago, they were still going. In fact, the lorries were painted in gold leaf, grey and red, with fishtail letters, as you would normally see on the rounding boards of a vintage carousel to this day.
Wow. So
my mother, what happened is, when I left school, my mother says, he's not going to spend his life driving around in circles on a wooden wall, so we're getting out of this business. So it was getting more difficult with the getting riders and pitches, and the animals, obviously, because of the animal right, and rightly so, were conditioned that you couldn't have them. So my father, during the war, the saddest day of his life, he had a Smith & Wesson 45 revolver licensed, and he was a registered lion tamer until he was 76, the same age as I am now. And he surrendered that at Stoke-on-Trent, said, I don't need it anymore. It's potentially too dangerous in my trailer, and gave it up. But during the war, you couldn't get the meat, horse meat, because of the restrictions. And the zoos wouldn't take Rita, because they were worried about bombings and the animals getting out. So the only alternative was to have her put down. So grandfather said, well, I'll get the vet down, because he was an animal man and very pragmatic. And he said, no, I brought her into this world and I'll take her out. He had to take he took his Smith & Wesson and put her down himself. That was the saddest day, he said, of his life that he ever had to endure. But he loved her dearly, and he wasn't going to let her starve. We couldn't get the food, and it was a very difficult period. Then after the war, I was the main attraction then, as being the youngest Wall of Death rider. And it was the only Wall of Death, really, that had 4 acts. Normally you had 3 pre-run. Then you had the tricks. Then you had the race. And then we raced. We were the only one that would race with 3 riders on the panels and me going round on the banking at the bottom. That was quite a sensation. And all my clothes, my breeches and my boots, came from Savile Row.
Oh, wow.
Even then. And I've still got the bike, fully restored.
Yeah.
I took it 5 years ago to the Bulldog Bash, and I won first prize as the best restored vintage vehicle. And sadly, if you remember that tragedy of when the guy, the Hells Angel, got shot on the M6 after the Stratford Bulldog Bash, he got murdered by rivals.
Oh, yeah.
He was the nicest chap, I knew him very well, and he's the one that actually organised the show of all the vintage bikes. And sadly he got killed after that event. I never went back again. It was so sad. It was. But and then moving on from that, I came into the business because they didn't want me riding around in circles. My dad bought an octopus ride, and we bought a skid ride, and we went on and on and on. And then John Collins, my father's brother-in-law from his first marriage, the firm was having problems, said to Dad, we'd like you to come back and manage the business. And he said, OK, well, we'll try it. I'll just come at the back end of the year, do a couple of fairs and see if we want to do it. Because we were travelling at that time with a firm called Stanley Thurston and Sons, who's still moving it to this day. And Uncle Stanley was an impeccable, immaculate showman, turned out, in the true sense, and his equipment was classic. It was absolutely marvellous, spotless. But we used to travel in green fields and parks. When you came to the Midlands, you went on to gravel, dust, ex-coal pits, pot banks, and it was filthy dirty. But when we counted up at the end of the season as to what money we got, we said, well, we can buy paint. So we'll go there because there was more money in the Midlands. And also father's background and history with the Collins family. So the Collins, John Collins' sons, John, Patrick, Vanessa, we called ourselves Relations with Complications. Because, and we were always, as far as we were concerned and they were concerned, as much cousins as cousins could be, even more so, still to this day. I'm very close to John Collins now, who's been heavily involved in the park side of the business, not so much the travelling side of it. And so we're still carrying on, and finished up, I took over control of it. Patrick wanted to carry on and concentrate on the music parks. So I bought him out, and that's when I became the sole owner, and that history is in that book of when I took over the firm, and we've been going ever since. In fact, I think I'm one of the rare showmen that's gone retro. We sold a Chaos ride, which is high-tech, all over the top, and bought a set of gallopers last year, my son. So we now have the most beautiful set of gallopers. As we speak, is opening in Leeds, German market. Absolutely looking beautiful. I was there last week and I enjoyed it more than anything, minding my gallopers. So 76 and still at it.
Yeah.
Still gilding, sign writing, and I now carry on those skills on my own equipment. Fascinating life. I wouldn't change it forever. If they said to me, would you do anything else? You went to public school, you did all this. Yes, I suppose I could have done. Could have been retired now, sat somewhere on a fat beach, which would bore me to death. No, still out there, still doing it.
Are you still wearing Savile Row? Are you wearing Savile Row today?
Yeah, I still in those days, showmen were, if you look at the photos and the history, and if you look at the riding masters and the showmen, they were impeccably turned out. Uncle Stanley had his bowler hat, his pipe, his waistcoat, and all his gear, and that's how he came out every day. And he managed with the business with a finger. He had twins and a daughter, Josie, Stanley and John, and they managed the rides. But everything, he would come out, so a little bit of paint on that would do, and a little bit like that. A bit like Walt Disney when he said, he was asked the question, do you draw cartoons anymore? I said, no. No, I don't draw cartoons. I haven't drawn cartoons for many years. What I do, I sprinkle the stardust. It's my job to go round the nose a little bit bigger, the ears a little bit smaller, a better smile. That's what I do now. And that's very much what he did. And it's what I do now. I go around and think, I think that could do with a bit of a touch-up. That wants replacing. It's time we moved on that. And my boys, I've got 3 of them, all got specific skills. So the business is in good hands for the future. But I keep my pen, as you can see, the white, beautiful pen.
Yes.
But while I've got that, and I've got the chequebook, I will always be the governor. And until my grandmother told me that advice, she said, never give away the chequebook and the pen, because they'll put you in a home and they will. I said, I don't think they will. Well, you never know. She said, why take the risk?
Very wise.
And I intend to keep that pen and that book until the old man can do no more.
Right.
I don't have to do it now. I could sit back and do nothing, but I don't want dementia. I don't want Alzheimer's, and I think it's a lot to do with keeping active. I'm a councillor as well, cabinet member for leisure and culture in Walsall.
All right.
I'm responsible for an £84 million budget. I've been there doing that for 11 years now. I did that because I did the presidency of the Showmen's Guild, and I've been through all the politics of the guild. And I was sat in the house, the wife said, you're getting on my nerves, go and find something to do. And a friend of mine who was the mayor came round for Christmas tree. He said, fancy being a councillor? I said, no, I couldn't do that. I said, I haven't got the skills. You don't need the skills. He said, just need common sense. And after a couple of attempts, I finished up getting elected. And within 12 months, I was responsible for transport and highways, and completed that mission. And then they put me in charge of leisure and culture. So, not bad for a showman. I spread my skills across the board. And that's what the old showmen used to do. And don't do it so much now. They're starting to have to do it. It's to become part of the community, not something that just appears for a week and goes away.
Yeah. Interesting.
The sad thing is you can't do a lot in a week. When you're there with a business and you're there 52 weeks of the year, it's much easier to make connections. So when you come in and out, and you're moving all the time, very difficult. But it can be done. And once people realise that you're a really rather odd business people that decide that they're going to have a business where the home is on a wheel, all the business in the shed and the construction part of it is all on wheels, then you shovel it around the country. You know, anybody with any common sense say, this is balmy, why don't we get a theme park and stay in one place? But no, it's what we do, it's in your blood, it's part of your heritage, it's part of your DNA, I think. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I'll be bored to tears. I've tried other things and abandoned them, so this is boring. I don't want a 9-to-5 job. I want a job where if I don't have to do anything, I can't, but if there's work to be done, we do it 7 days a week. My last holiday was skiing last January. Since then, it's 7 days a week. Here today, tomorrow I'm in Nantwich, see a football club for a site. On Saturday, we've got some illuminations, switch-ons with kiddie rides. Plus, we've got leads on with a carousel, so something to do. Fascinating. And I've still got my bikes. I still ride them, still drive big lorries. So while you've got it, use it. Because as soon as you pack it away, it goes rusty. And you've got to get it out and service it and oil the wheels and keep going. And that's a lot of the problems going on to social matters of the old people is they retire 60, 65 and do nothing. Just sit and watch the television. The brain's a piece of equipment you've got to exercise like the rest of your body. If you sit there and just watch the screen or do nothing and don't have any challenges, that's why I believe Alzheimer's and dementia is because they can identify it easier now. It's more prevalent now than it's ever been. And that's because people stop.
You're saying about challenges as it's important to keep giving yourself challenges through your life, and I guess that's something you learned really early on. If you were doing the Wall of Death riding at 8, then were you very frightened, or did you just take it in your stride and go, I've got to do this because this is what we do?
Don't forget that to be put in an environment of Disney World, and the choice is, do you want to be in school or do you want to be in Disney World? It's a bit of a no-brainer. So when I came home, I mean, me and my sister, she's 4 years younger than me, I had a bike. We started off with bicycles going round. How far can we get up with this bike? And then Father was obviously watching us and tried it with 3-wheel bikes, and I'd kill myself. I got scars all over me.
Yeah.
Well, I've come a cropper. So it was somewhere to play. And Wall of Death is a show, so it's something to play in. And I used to sit in the middle when they were riding, and Dad had put me in there. He took me up. When we packed the Wall of Death up in 52, he took me up on his bike himself personally, with me on the handlebars.
Oh, wow.
And no, it wasn't frightening. It was a challenge. It was fascinating. So then he came back with this little corgi bike that the parachute regiment used when they landed in Normandy. This bike folded up and went in a tube, and it was thrown out of the Dakotas. And the idea it landed, it had its petrol, everything in it, unfolded it, and the soldier gave it a push, and off it went. Well, the trouble is they landed in a swamp, but so there were quite a few spare ones of these about. And I think about 30 quid for it from an army sales. Got it back. You take all the bits off. You don't want mud guards and headlights and all that because they're potentially dangerous. And said, right, give it a push. There you go. And I used to ride this around the fairgrounds with sister on the tank, and we'd spend hours and hours and hours around Grandad's cafe in the winter. Then I thought, well, I'll try this on this, see if we can get it on there. Dad said, well, you need bugger off, leave you to it. I got it on. I thought, this is not bad, and kept going, and I got it on. Then he thought, right, get him some breeches and boots now. There's the youngest Wall of Death rider in the world. And when we've got opposition, wheel him out. And that's what I did in the holidays. I mean, and I used to love it. I've still got my little helmet, skull and crossbones, my name painted on the tank, and it's still in the shed to this day, all done up.
Oh, fantastic.
And, so, I mean, I think it's wonderful. I'm just looking at that gallopers. I thought, today only, there's my granddad with gallopers, and now we've got gallopers.
Yeah.
You know, history repeats itself, doesn't it? Goes round in circles. But it's the background. I had a good education. I had a marvellous learning curve from Stanley Thurston Senior on how to run a business, looking at other people in the business, what I call the entrepreneurs of it, and thought, this is how it should be run, and that's what I've done. Our name's on everything. Well, we run a fleet of vehicles that are all standard. We just won the Cup at Nottingham Goose Fair this year for the best turned out transport fleet.
Oh, lovely.
So I'm very proud of that. So that's been the life. I could write a book, I suppose.
Yes.
But ought to. I represented the mayor of Birmingham in Frankfurt, and Frankfurt's twinned with Birmingham, and the market in Birmingham is from Frankfurt, and the market in Leeds is the same family as from Frankfurt. So when I got there, I mean, I was fated like I was royalty. So I thought, well, I said to him, listen, how have you changed it? What was the image, I said, of a showman, let's say, post First World War? Oh, he said, dodgy lot of people. Didn't want to be associated with them.
Yeah.
I said, well, what have you done to change this so wonderfully into the image you have now of highly respected, part of the economy, part of the social interaction, part of the community, business element? He said, we didn't do it, the men. The women did it. They opened up the doors to their homes, and they invited people in, and they got involved in local charity events, and they started the ball rolling. He said it was a pebble in a pond that became a boulder. He said, and it started to change. All of a sudden we were having association meetings in various areas of Germany, and the local councillor would come. Then the local MP thought, well, hang on, I ought to be there. So the local MP comes. Then we have a big conference now. They're equivalent to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They get prominent people there. They have marvellous representation in their parliament. And all this was done by opening a door. Simple as that. And it sounds simplistic, but that's what it's about. Because the people then realised, hang on, these are not what we perceived and what our caricature and our images of these people.
Yeah.
They're no different than us, really, aren't they? They just do something silly, like charge around the country. But when you get two cars like that, and I give you that one,
oh, thank you.
Then I give you that one, you can have that one. You put those together.
They're quite different.
And you go, hang on.
So you do fun fairs, and you're also a counsellor. Yes. I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. But great combination, I think. I think an intriguing combination. I think you'd be like, well, you must know about business and you must know about travel. Well,
I'm not the only one. There are others in our business that have now younger fellows. There's a guy called Pullen in Lancashire. He's a counsellor. John Killeen, our president, he's a counsellor. He's been leader of his council. He's been the mayor. You know, as Pat Collins was. He was the mayor. 84. He was mayor, alderman, freeman. It's all up there in the town. We've even got a pub in Bloxwich where our depot was. Witherspoon's bought it. Spent a fortune on it, $1.5 million. And it's called The Showman. And inside is all the memorabilia of Pat Collins and everything else there now. In Bloxwich now. And if you look at the media, only last night, if you look at the media and you look at the advertising section of the media, how much they use the background of the fairground, the art and the memorabilia to promote their products. It's fascinating, you know. I mean, the BBC from quite a bit had the set of gallopers as their main thing. They had the Wall of Death, Ken Fox, on it as part of the the interlude bit.
Yeah, people love it. Yeah,
so and you'll find, but we still get a problem with the perception of writers when they do plays and films, of the muffler and the scruffy, and that's not correct. It's a misconception. I don't know how to get the image. A lot of it we've cured, I think, by the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act many years ago, which I was part of for 29 years. And what that's done is that's made the business a bit more professional in terms of uniforms, badges, proper procedures. And I think that's improved the image tremendously.
And that's it for this week. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really loved making it, so thanks for listening. If you're enjoying these shows, please give us a quick star rating on iTunes, or just tell a friend about it if you don't have access to iTunes or don't like using iTunes. I know a lot of people don't. As I promised quite early on in the process, this was going to be a collection of 50 episodes, so you can go back and find all the other ones. There are episodes where I interview magicians, a hypnotist, somebody with synesthesia, comic book writer, professional dancers, composers, musicians, visual artists, all kinds of people, an archivist at a dance company, everything that is to do with going behind the scenes of creativity. So check those out, and I'll see you next week.